Hello everyone, this is Janice Goldschmidt, and I'm back with another in our training series. The topic today is cutting skills. We're going to be talking about strategies for promoting independence with an adaptive knife. We rarely see development of cutting skills for the population that we work with, and the reason of that is, of course, there's a great, tremendous fear about safety. And rightly so, because traditional cutlery requires um, adequate motor control. But the adaptive knives we're going to be using today are very safe. And I'm going to be giving you a lot of strategies so that you can bring an individual not only to capacity, but also that they will find it enjoyable. We're going to be doing a specific food project today to give you some specific examples of how you can utilize newfound cutting skills. There are quite a few adaptive tools to help individuals with motor challenges learn to cut. The two that I most commonly use in my teaching kitchen are the popper box and then our nylon adaptive knives. The popper box, the picture on the top, is very, very useful for churning out uniform sizes, which you need for some cutting projects. That's a really hard thing to do, is to give an individual a knife and have them cut uniform small pieces of onion. So the popper box is very good for getting at that. It uh, doesn't work well for a wide range of ingredients, but for specific tasks, it's quite useful. But the focus today is really going to be on the adaptive nylon knives you see in the bottom picture. But just be aware that besides these two, there are many others that are out there, very specialized products that can be very useful for specific clients. So these adaptive knives are very readily used in my teaching kitchen. As I said, we've had them for 5 years. We've never had an injury. They're actually regulated as toys because they're designed for children, essentially. We buy them on Amazon, 3 for $9. If you do not have one of these in in the residence where you work, please reach out to me. I'll be glad to get you a supply of them. These are very useful for some clients, but not all. Some clients simply do not have the power to put into the knife because it requires a back and forth motion. Note the serrated edge. You can't cut down like you would with a regular knife. You have to cut back and forth, back and forth. And you simply have to have the power. You also have to have left-right bilaterality. You have to be able to hold with one hand, stabilize with one hand, and cut with the other. And some individuals simply don't have that. So this is not a perfect tool for everyone. Likewise, it's not a perfect tool for every cutting project. It does not do well with really dense things like raw potatoes, very dense, very hard to cut with these knives. It does not do well for raw meat, for a lot of other ingredients. But for the broadest range of ingredients and the broadest range of individuals, this is our go-to cutting tool. So I've told you that these adaptive knives require a sawing motion, back and forth, back and forth. But the other thing that all use with a knife are going to require is a hand to stabilize. You need two hands to use a knife. We call that bilaterality when you're doing something with your left and right hands at the same time. And some of the individuals we support simply don't have the ability. In which case, you may want to stabilize the object while they cut. Look at the pictures above. These are three simple cutting projects. In each one, you can see that one hand stabilizes the object, the other hand cuts. And you have to train this. At the beginning, it will come to them later when the object starts to move around. But if you hand over hand a stabilized hand on the object, the other hand can utilize the sawing motion. So that back and forth motion with one hand, the other hand will stabilize the object that's being cut. These are very important motor issues that have to be addressed when you're supporting cutting skills. The other thing that's vital is an appropriate project. You need to give them lots of opportunity to learn to cut. Not just the incidental things like cutting your pork chop at dinner, but lots and lots of opportunity to learn that motor mapping, of back and forth and back and forth and stabilizing. So we need an appropriate project. And one of my favorite projects to introduce cutting skills is potato salad. There's a lot of cutting, but it's really soft cutting, so you can really reinforce The important skill sets, one hand stabilizes, the other does the sawing motion. And potato salad is a really good example of a collated meal or side dish or snack. You're going to be learning about that in video 5 coming up, but a collated meal is basically under the formula x plus y equals z. We take 2 or 3 different ingredients, we add them together to make a final product. The final result is greater than the parts, right? So let's look at potato salad. So the collated meal will be cold potatoes plus cold hard-boiled eggs plus a mustard mayo sauce equals potato salad. That's simple. It's usually pretty popular, and it's an ideal activity to do to carry through on when you're trying to teach or support development of cooking skills. Okay. Okay, so the first step in preparing a potato salad is to cut up potatoes. We're going to use cold baked potatoes, and in a future training session you'll learn how an activity where individuals can learn to bake potatoes. And if you do those kind of activities, you typically will have lots of extra baked potatoes around and you want to recycle them, and potato salad is a great way to do it. They must be baked because then they're very, very soft. Raw potatoes are much too hard to cut with adaptive knives. They must be baked and they must be cold. We don't want them cutting hot baked potatoes. That's a safety risk. So cold baked potatoes are ideal for this activity. And we're going to look at a training video now. So once again, you are observing Conrad Goldschmidt, who is slicing up this very, very soft. You can see how easy it is to slice up. It's a dream to cut with adaptive knives. It's like slicing warm butter. He's cutting cold baked potatoes, and he's having absolutely no problem. And the key here is that he has to, get it to a certain size. We don't want it too big, not too small. With potato salad, you have a lot of leeway. I want to point out to you that you can't just press down like you would with a regular knife and have the object break apart. You have to use that sawing motion. Look how he's moving the knife back and forth. And that is very important. And to promote that, you have to coach them through. There's Conrad. He has a lot to say as he cuts these potatoes. He's doing a very good job, and he's going to do this entire batch of potatoes. So to coach them through this motion that they have to maintain, I typically will sing back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And the song, of course, has to be tolerated by the individual. Some love it, some hate it. Conrad isn't really in the mood for that today, but typically he does enjoy it. He's doing a very nice job. You can see how easy this is to cut and how easy this would be to give them lots of practice time with an adaptive knife. Okay? This is the ideal thing to cut. So he's continuing to plow through these potatoes, and you can see that the bowl is filling up. And he's, notice with learning to cut, the key skill set is you have to hold the potato with one hand. Notice how he holds it with one hand and cuts with another. Not all individuals will have that bilaterality. For those individuals who don't, who can never get there, you may want to stabilize it for them as they cut. But most individuals who have the ability can get to independence, holding the piece and cutting. Okay, the second ingredient in our potato salad is going to be cold hard-boiled eggs. They have to be hard-boiled, of course, because for the consistency, and they have to be cold because we don't want a safety risk. Also, hot hard-boiled eggs are actually difficult to cut. So that's our next ingredient. They're going to be, you can imagine, if you can imagine it in your head, that cutting cold hard-boiled eggs is very simple. It's very soft, and it's a perfect thing to cut with adaptive knives. I'm not going to show you a training video of Conrad cutting hard-boiled eggs. He actually has a gag reflex for eggs. It's one of those sensory things that really he gets a strong reaction from. So no eggs today, but I have cut them for this video. So we'll move on to the next step. So now we have a bowl of chopped potatoes and chopped eggs. And we're going to add our mustard mayo sauce you see there in the lower right-hand corner to our mixture, and we will have potato salad. X plus Y equals Z. There's one skill set we haven't talked about, and that is mixing. That is a very challenging skill for this population. Almost every student I've ever worked with, even the superstars, have trouble learning to mix ingredients. They have motor planning issues, and it just comes with the territory. I've got a lot of techniques for teaching stirring, and perhaps we'll be covering that in a future video. But for now, just make sure that you give them lots of time to do it. Don't just grab the spoon away from them. Um, give them plenty of opportunity. So let's look at our training video. He's going to pour it in. Looking good. And now he's going to start mixing. This is going to be a little viscous. It will be a bit of a challenge in terms of stirring. Lots of patience. Give him lots of opportunity to work through it. Another very nice collated recipe that is perfect for teaching cutting skills is fruit salad. Most fruits like a strawberry, blueberries of course don't need to be cut, but strawberries, grapes, bananas, these are ideal to cut with an adaptive knife. No problem at all. So depending on what you have available. The problem is in some of the hard fruits. So if we're thinking of adding an apple to our fruit salad, look at the picture on the left. Look how challenging that would be for cutting an individual. If they have that knife and a huge apple, it's just going to be a real challenge to cut it, start making it smaller because it's going to be awkward. So in order to stabilize it, we're going to cut the fruit in half, put the cut halves face down, and now the apple is very stable and the individual can start to cut it into smaller pieces. So with the harder fruits in our adaptive knife, we're going to want to adjust the fruit so that it's very stable on the cutting board before we let them start to work. So here's Conrad. He's got two apple halves that are stabilized on the board, and he's making that very nice back and forth motion. If you try and just press down like you do with a normal knife, you're not going to get anywhere. You have to use that motion. So you're going to have to be constantly coaching them until they have it down. So there you have it. That's our adaptive knife. It is not hard to use, but it does require quite a bit of practice and training. So we got to give them lots of opportunities to utilize their newfound skills. In my experience, once they get the hang of it, they really enjoy it. They love the feeling of being involved and mastering something. So let's think of creative ways that they can be allowed to participate in cutting activities. And there I am. I am here to support you. And if you have any suggestions or concerns or questions about this video, likewise, if you have any ideas for future videos you'd like to see, please let me know. As I said in the video, if you need adaptive knives in the house where you work, please let me know. I will make sure that some are routed to you. And I'll see you in the next video.